Well, breaking now, we now know some of what Kevin McCarthy gave away to Matt Gaetz and the 20 Republican insurgents 1 week ago, after they had humiliated McCarthy with 14 failed attempts to become Speaker of the House. It was always a threat, and now it's confirmed. House Republicans are planning to breach the debt limit. The Washington Post reports tonight House Republicans' payment prioritization plan may also stipulate that the Treasury Department should continue making payments on Social Security, Medicare, and veterans benefits, as well as funding the military, two people said. Such a move would be unprecedented and hugely controversial, and even releasing the plan could turn into a major political liability for the GOP. A hypothetical proposal that protects Social Security, Medicare, veterans benefits, and the military would still leave out huge swaths of critical federal expenditure on things like Medicaid, food safety inspections, border control, air traffic control, to name just a few of the thousands of programs. Democrats are also likely to accuse Republicans of prioritizing payments to U.S. bondholders, which include Chinese banks, over American citizens, end quote. Here's the thing. None of this is new. Republicans tried this trick with President Obama when they first took the debt ceiling hostage. The Treasury warned then, and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says today, Congress cannot allow this to happen. You see, the victim of breaching the debt ceiling isn't congressional Democrats. It's not Joe Biden. It's you and me and everyone in America and possibly the global economy. And to threaten it today is, in fact, much more dangerous than it was back when Barack Obama was president, back when inflation and interest rates were low. Because of inflation, which is currently a global phenomenon, interest rates are higher today than they were then. Remember, insofar as Republicans had any policy in the midterm elections, they claimed to care about inflation, blaming Biden and congressional Democrats for causing it and displaying staggering ignorance about basic economics. Nevertheless, Republicans claimed that they would fix inflation if they got elected. Now, just listen to the Republican experts in that article I just quoted from. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce's vice president says, quote, prioritization doesn't work. We had this discussion a decade ago. The U.S. government skips its payments to America's seniors or skips its payments to bondholders. Both of those things call into question the full faith and credit of the United States government and our commitment to paying our bills. Both of them have pretty catastrophic economic consequences, end quote. An analyst at the Manhattan Institute says studying this in 2011 convinced us that this would be a really bad idea and something we really did not want to happen. We didn't end the exercise saying, this is feasible and smart. We said, let's avoid this at all costs because it's going to be a disaster, end quote. Disaster, catastrophe. These are not hyperbole. These are not conservative, not from these conservative entities. But today, in a letter to Congress, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, who is an expert at this since she was the former head of the Federal Reserve, warned that the United States is expected to reach its borrowing limit next Thursday. Secretary Yellen writes, quote, failure to meet the government's obligations would cause irreparable harm to the U.S. economy, the livelihoods of all Americans, and global financial stability. I respectfully urge Congress to act promptly to protect the full faith and credit of the United States, end quote. Secretary Yellen also writes that the U.S. will be, quote, taking certain extraordinary measures to prevent the United States from defaulting on its obligations. Now, failing to increase or suspend the debt limit could delay Social Security and Medicare benefits, military salaries, tax refunds even. Today, the Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and the House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries issued a statement saying, quote, a default forced by extreme MAGA Republicans could plunge the country into a deep recession and lead to even higher costs for America's working families on everything from mortgages and car loans to credit card interest rates. Democrats want to move quickly to pass legislation addressing the debt limit so there is no chance of risking a catastrophic default. We've seen in previous debt ceiling standoffs that even the threat of default leads to even higher costs for working families. Republican leaders must do the right thing to protect Social Security, the economy, and our country, end quote. So it's up to the Republican caucus to figure this out, like immediately. And if you recall from last week's speaker selection debacle, that's a really bad thing for you and me, and possibly everyone. For starters, some of these rocket scientists don't even know what the debt ceiling is.
The American people are sick and tired of this endless debt increasing.
Okay, that's like buying a car and saying you're sick and tired of the monthly payments, or buying a house and saying you've had it with the damn mortgage payments. Month after month after month, it never seems to stop. Paying your bills is not the same as increasing your debt. The purchase is the debt. And like purchases, big purchases like houses and cars, or the social safety net payments, or defense, you pay as you go. Kevin McCarthy made a deal with that guy, Scott Perry, to win the speakership. So they're stupid to contend with. But then there are the chaos Republicans, which is different from the stupid caucus. The chaos caucus, if you will, are the burn it down Republicans, the ones who cheered on the Capitol attackers, the ones who took McCarthy's speaker battle to 15 votes. You really want to count on them to step back from the brink and do the responsible thing? And what will the person beholden to the chaos caucus do?
The one thing I know, in 4 days from now, people have a decision to make. Do they want to stay on the same path of inflation, of gas prices rising, of the cost of living as you go to the grocery store?
That was November. The same Republicans spent the past year attacking Democrats on inflation are the same Republicans who, if they don't vote to increase the debt limit, will cause high inflation, a recession, or catastrophically, both inflation and a recession. For those of you my age or older, there's an example of what can happen. Japan in the 1990s. Between 1991 and 2001, Japan lost the entire decade. It was actually called the lost decade. Japan saw a significant slowdown in what was once a red-hot economy, the most promising major economy in the world. Japan was, in 1990, the future. By 2001, it was the past. Because in that decade, Japan's economy simply stopped growing. They faced inflation, which requires increasing interest rates to fight, and they faced a recession, which requires decreasing interest rates to fight. You just can't do both. So Japan had stagflation, economic stagnation, and inflation at the same time. That is an economic death spiral. President Barack Obama once referenced Japan's lost decade, saying, quote, "The federal government is the only entity left with the resources to jolt our economy back to life." As a consequence, they, meaning Japan, suffered what was called the lost decade, where essentially for the entire 1990s, they did not see any significant economic growth. Japan's lost decade could become a reality for America if Republicans do not increase the debt limit. The rock-solid labor market that we have right now with record low unemployment has been a boon to Americans. Yes, things do cost more, but higher prices are a lot easier to manage if you have a job than if you don't. The Washington Post reported that the possible number of layoffs from a true debt ceiling breach could be in the millions. So remember this tonight. The Republicans' hostage isn't some esoteric thing called the debt ceiling. The hostage is not Joe Biden. The hostage is you, because you and me and all of us are the ones who are going to get hurt.